we are into day 4 of the Newton's laws of motion and its application, right? So this week we are not dealing with any friction. Okay, so let me continue from where we left in the previous class. I think I gave you a homework of finding out the equation of the catenary by taking the bottommost point as the origin, right? So let me go back to the actual question that I think, right. So this was the question we did, where we found out what is the tension at the bottom and tension at the top in terms of the angle between the tangents at the top and bottom, right? So this was the question wherein we took the FBDs, and the homework was this. So what is the equation of the shape, assuming the origin is taken at the bottom, and I asked you to try to take some parameters of your choice. So some parameter should be there. It could be the length of the string. It could be the distance between the two supports at the top, right? So these two, right? So that parameters you have to take. So when you do that, so some of the students were insisting I give the answer so that they can match it with their working. So this is the answer. If you take the bottom as the origin, you could see the parameter A there. So those who have already done, uh, try presenting the parameter A in terms of properties of catenary. So properties could be, it could be tension in the string. It could be the distance between the two supports. You could see there are two supports here, the distance between them, or it could be the length of the string itself or mass density. So what does this letter A or the parameter A in this expression depend upon? Right. So once that is done, so the shape of the curve, this is called catenary. It's not a parabola as it looks like. Every U-shaped curve is not a parabola, right? So you can have infinite types of U-shaped curves. So, and this is one of them and a very famous one, and it's called a catenary. Okay. So let's do some questions on similar kind. So this is another famous question on hanging rope. Now you could see the difference between the previous homework question and this one is that the supports are not at the same level. Okay, you need not have the supports at the same horizontal level. So this is quite different in a way that one support is here and the second support is here, and then you can see rope is hanging under its own weight. Diagram is not drawn very clearly to the scale, so that you could see some dotted line here. That dotted line is the tangent drawn to the topmost point of the curve, and there is another tangent which is drawn here at the bottommost. It's not horizontal, it's drawn like it is horizontal, but just imagine there is a tangent here. These tangents angles with verticals were measured. You could see here it is alpha, and here the angle of the tangent with vertical is beta. Okay, so it is tied between nail A on the wall and nail B on the ground. The rope without touching the ground assumes a curved shape known as catenary that I told in the previous page. Tangents at the ends A and B make an angle alpha and beta with vertical respectively. Which of the following conclusions can you make? One or more than one may be correct. Okay, so just try it out. The four options in front of you. Horizontal component of the tensile force in the rope is uniform. Vertical component of tensile force increases with height. Angle alpha can never be greater than angle beta, and alpha cannot assume the value of 0 degrees. These are the four options in front of you. So first and foremost, if you're taking the rope in some fashion like this, and you take a small part of the rope somewhere here, right, as its FBD, okay, you should realize the FBD of small part. So So imagine I color it in a different color. So let's say this is blue part. Okay. So the FBD of the small part, I take that part out for our convenience, through it like this. Then on this, what are the forces acting on it? So there will be a downward weight acting on it because the rope in these situations is considered to be non-ideal. It has its own weight, DMG, and there will be tension acting at the two ends. Remember, any part of the FBD of a rope, tension is always drawn away from it in a tangential manner, whether it is in the context of a pulley or whether it is constant context of a block or rope itself. You could see this part of the rope is pulled by another rope here and another rope here, so that would be tensions. So if I consider this direction to be its tension to be T, then in this direction it would be T plus dt. Okay, right? And not just that, you should realize that if I draw a horizontal or with vertical, if you want to calculate. So if this is vertical, if this angle is theta, then calculus tells you to take this angle as theta plus d theta. That's how the angles change. Please understand, this is not a straight line. So the angles also change by a very small amount. And if equilibrium is to be considered, you should realize that the tension component in the vertical direction of these two should not be equal to each other. There should be a difference in the tension component in the vertical direction so that DMG is balanced. Whereas in the horizontal direction, the tension component of this and tension component of this should cancel out. Okay, so what can you write? The T cos theta, which is horizontal component, should remain uniform. Okay, right. How do you mathematically represent it? Either you could say that is T plus dt into cos of theta plus d theta should be equal to T cos theta. This is one way of writing, or simply the T cos theta should not change, means d of T cos theta should be equal to 0, either which way. Okay, so you could say that this entire things are equal to each other, or the change, small change in T cos theta is not there. So this is one way of saying the horizontal tension component remains uniform, whereas the vertical tension, similarly, the vertical tension component, the change in it, directly I'm writing, instead of writing all of this big stuff, right? Sine of theta plus d theta and all that. So let me be very careful here. Horizontal component would have been in this problem sine, right? Because I have taken theta with vertical, right? So should be careful here. This would become sine because the angle I have chosen was with vertical in this question. So this would be, correction, sine here and sine here, and so because it's with vertical, this should become cos. I hope you appreciate that. Okay, right. Idea remains the same, right? So vertical component changes so as to balance DMG. Okay, so what is this number equal to? DMG. This would be DMG. Okay, right. So these are the two equations that govern the way the rope will shift. Okay. So in case you have done your homework of finding out the equation yesterday, you should have written or started with these two kind of equations and converted them into the equation of y versus x. Okay, so let's go back to the question and look at the options. Horizontal component of tension force or tensile force or tension in the rope is uniform. I think first answer is definitely correct. Vertical component of tensile force increases with height. Vertical component of the tensile force increases with height. Should realize that the angle, right, which is here, it remember T sine, right? Because you are having T sine theta is a constant, right? So you should have t sine theta is a constant which is k, right? Then he's asking what happens to t cos theta. Does it increase or decrease? Can I write this as t is equal to k cosecant theta? K where k is a uniform. So how did I get this? This is the horizontal component remaining uniform, where theta is the different angles that it will make. So theta starts from beta here and keeps changing and becomes finally alpha. That's your theta here. So if t is cosecant theta, then what's the value of t cos theta? T cos theta would be equal to k cosecant theta cos theta, which is nothing but k cot theta. Okay, so he's asking is k cot theta increasing or decreasing? Okay, right. I think by considering the logic that beta is larger value and as it goes, it becomes smaller and smaller angles with the vertical. So theta is a reducing angle as you go from lower position and increase the height. And once theta reduces as you go up, cot theta is a decreasing function. So if theta decreases, then cot theta should increase with height. So that should be this one. Okay, angle alpha can be greater than angle beta. I don't think it can be greater than angle beta, as we already discussed. It actually reduces. Alpha should be lesser than beta, so C should be wrong. And angle alpha cannot assume the value of 0 degrees. Right. Only way angle alpha can assume 0 degrees is if this point B is exactly here, then the rope will not achieve a catenary. So please don't use that as the option because he already said it achieves a state of catenary shape, right? And catenary shape will not happen if B point is exactly below A point. So anytime B is slightly to the right of the wall, you will always get a catenary in which alpha will not be equal to 0 degrees, as you could clearly see. Okay, right. So D also should be marked as an answer. So this is how you attempt a simple JE level question. So you could see this question doesn't require the equation that I asked you to solve in the previous problem. You don't need this equation to solve this kind of a question. Okay, so you need just the free body diagram and its understanding. This is the most important part that you should have started with. Okay, right. Let's attempt one more on this one. By the end of these two questions, you should actually have good understanding of how to solve the homework. So that's the reason why we are taking up these now. A uniform rope of length L is equal to 12 meter suspended between two fixed nails A and B. You could see these are now back to the same level that are in the same horizontal level. If the rope makes an angle of theta is equal to, this is 37 degrees, right? So this theta, this time he's measuring with horizontal. Find the height h of the lowest point on the rope of the rails. That means between this level to this lowest point, he wants this height h and radius of curvature of the bottommost point. So there's a curve, right? For a circle, radius of curvature is uniform. For any other shape, at different places, the radius of curvature is different, as I already told you during our basic maths classes. So he wants what is the radius of curvature at the bottommost point. So what I'll try to do to hide the homework is I'll not use the equation that is the homework's answer. So assuming the equation of catenary is not with us, we'll assume that this is a JE understanding problem and we'll try to solve this without the help of this. And during the course of this solution, we'll also realize how you can actually find the catenary equation. Okay, so just try this one out. Length is given for the total rope and the angles at the top are given. Only these two informations are given and you're supposed to calculate the rest. Okay, right. So first we'll start off with the step one, which was our problem yesterday also. I think two important FBDs in the context of this kind of rope hanging problem is either half FBD or the full FBD. So and we realized half FBD was more powerful because it includes both the tension at the top and the bottom. So I'll take the half FBD of the rope as step one. Okay, right. So the half FBD will look like this. Okay, right. So the tension at the top, I'll call it as T. Tension at the top, I'll call it as T. Could see that, right? And tension at the bottom, I'll call it as T subscript B, B for bottom. Okay, right. And the weight of this rope would be lambda times length L G divided by 2. So this is half FBD, so only half the weight will act on it. Okay. So the angle has already been given in the question. He was very kind enough to do that. So the angle made by this one at the top is 37 degrees. Okay, right. I'll substitute theta at the end, right? Okay. So 37 degrees was given to us. Let's use horizontal weight force balance and vertical force balance. You could say in vertical direction, the value of capital T sine 37 minus lambda Lg by 2 should be equal to 0, right? And in horizontal direction, capital T cos 37 minus TB should be equal to 0. So you'd end up having the value of TB, which is the bottom, right? Why am I interested in the bottom? Because maybe that could help me to draw an FBD at the bottom so that I can find the radius of curvature at the bottom, because he's talking about both the lowest points. So I'm more interested in TB. Anyway, you can also find the topmost point because these are the two variables, two equations. So the value of the bottom most tension would be 2 lambda Lg divided by 3. When I substitute sine 37 and cos 37 and divide the two equations for T. Okay, right. Now what we'll do is step 2 is interesting. This is one FBD that we didn't do yesterday. So this is something new. So concentrate. Instead of taking FBD of half or full, I'll take a small differential element. This differential element, I'll take it at the bottom. Okay. So FBD of small differential element at the bottom. Okay, right. So that green color arc that you have like this. So you should understand I am drawing it like a big smile here, but it's only a part of this one here. We're talking about, look at this, the only small part here that I have taken. Let's suppose it subtends an angle of d theta, right, at its center of curvature. Okay, and also understand this is not semicircle. So if the center of curvature has to be marked, it could be below h or above h. We don't know. Wherever that center of curvature is, it subtends a very small angle. So that's what it is. So assume this is the radius of curvature that we are trying to find. So these two ends should subtend an angle in that manner. So this angle that I'm talking about is your d beta. Let's write, because I don't want to confuse with theta. Now with this as d beta, what's the direction of the tension at the each end? Direction of the tension should be tangential, and since those two are radius vectors, they will be perpendicular to this tangent direction. So I think you all will agree if these two are written as 90 degrees to each other. Okay. And what is the value of tension? Since this is a differential element, the tension at the bottom and tension at these ends should be the same. Remember, this is very small value, right? So whatever TB that I found in step 1, I'll use it here. Whatever TB that I found here, can you see this TB I'll use here. So I'll just write it as TB. This is TB. And this is also TB. Okay, right. And because of that, there is a weight also acting downward, which is this time very small value. It is lambda into dl of this. So if the radius of curvature is r, if the radius of curvature of this is r, which we are here to find out, let's say this is r that I want, and this is d beta. What is the arc length of this particular thing? I think r d beta. So I should write that r d beta, this is dl into g. Right. Okay, now just bring these two tensions to the side so that we can vectorially add, and I will argue that the tensions resultant of these two TBs should act in the upward direction so that it can balance this one. Now, in order to add those two tensions, I should bring them to the side here so that you can clearly see them. So maybe the tensions look like this on the sideline when they are brought to tails touching each other. So can you help me find out what is the angle between the two tensions? What is this angle going to be? I think that's very clear. If I had extended this and met them like this, they will form a quadrilateral. Can you see? If I had extended the tangent like this and extended the tangent like this, then they will form a quadrilateral with this two as sides and these two as sides. Sum of all four angles of a quadrilateral is 360, of which two of them are 90. So if this is d beta, this angle should be 180 degrees minus d beta. This is the resultant situation. So the resultant of these two tensions that I will put up would be equal to 2t of cos of angle between them divided by 2. I'm taking a components of the tension in this direction. So half angle cos and twice of it I have to do. And what would this yield? This is 90 degrees minus d beta by 2, cos of 90 minus something sine. Okay, so this step would be 2t into sine of d beta divided by 2. What is sine of small angle in limits? This is very small angle. Sine of very small angle is angle itself. Remember, sine angle divided by angle tending to 0 is 1, right? So I can do that. So this is approximately equal to 2t into angle itself, or simply t into d beta. So all of this on the sideline I could do. So next time onwards, I will not redo this entire thing. Whenever I have, and we will find this situation quite often in FBDs, where for a small arc, if the two tensions are equivalent or magnitude wise equal, and they are acting at an angle of this 180 minus d beta, they will result in an answer in this direction, which is equal to the magnitude into this angle. That's what we got. So what is the equation of balance now? The value of t d beta in the upward direction minus lambda into r d beta g is equal to 0. And d beta therefore gets cancelled. I think I can cancel d beta and d beta. And the value of this also is tb, right? Yeah. So the value of r comes out to be tb divided by, I think, r tb divided by lambda into g. So this is your answer. So what was the value of TB that you found in step 1? 2 lambda Lg by 3, which makes this one a pretty simple answer, which is 2L by 3. So radius of curvature at the bottom is 2L by 3, which is, I think L was given as 6 meter, I guess, if I remember it correctly. No, 12 meter was given. So if I substitute, this would be 8 meters as the answer. So radius of curvature of this is 8 meters. Here the curvature is 8 meters. We didn't use any maths. We didn't use the formula for radius of curvature. If you already know the equation of this y versus x, then you can use that formula of radius of curvature from maths of 1 plus dy by dx whole square whole power 3 by 2. Remember that? But that is not needed. That's the power of free body diagrams. Okay, I hope you understood the step 2. So what is left out in the question? I think we are here to also find out this height h. We have not yet found that value. Okay, right? So, and you can't say that value is equal to radius of curvature. This, I told you, I keep on telling you that it is not a semicircle. The value of r could be greater than h or less than h, and we will reveal that in step 3 of the solution. So in step 3, we'll go back to a general FBD. So the thing is, here we drew a differential element at the bottom. We are specific here. So now we will draw the differential element at an arbitrary position, some arbitrary position here. I'll pick out a small part and then draw its FBD. Okay. So what we are doing here is, if this is your rope, what I meant was, if I pick this part out and draw its FBD, so it's actually an arc. Okay, I'm drawing almost like a straight line, but it should be an arc. Okay, right, considered here as all nearly a straight line. So imagine this length that you're speaking of is DL. Okay, and you can take its x and y components as dx and dy. Listen carefully to this. And the angle this one makes at that arbitrary position is theta, let's suppose. Okay, so that angle I'll try to mark it in a different color so that you can see that. Okay, so I'll mark it inside itself. I hope you can all see. So there is a small right angle triangle that I considered, of which the hypotenuse is this DL, and the x component of DL and y component of DL form the sides of that right angle triangle. Okay, so what can you write from here? Here you can write DL is equal to dy cosecant theta. Is that fine? Can you see that on the sidelines? Cosecant theta. Okay, so keep it aside. It will be useful. Also, the value of the tension here inside this tension here would be a function, right? Because tension would keep varying inside that. Okay, so that function t is such that t cos theta is equal to some k. How did I write this? This from the previous problem. Remember, the tension's horizontal component is always a fixed value. Last time I measured angle with vertical. This time the angles are being measured with horizontal. So the horizontal component of tension in a hanging rope will remain uniform. So that uniform value I'm saying is K. And that K itself is nothing but the tension at the bottom, right? Okay, so this K I know from the previous situation. So K, please understand, is nothing but tension at the bottom. K is TB. I'll substitute it if required. Okay, right. So what is the value of the tension that we found out? I think 2 lambda Lg by 3. You can see that in the step 1 of the solution. Okay, and therefore T is equal to K secant theta, that I can rearrange from here. Also in vertical direction, this was in horizontal direction, right? All this in horizontal direction. What about vertical direction? In vertical direction, you can write d of t sine theta. That is, small change in t sine theta should help it balance dmg. Okay, right. Now I'll substitute the value of tension into this with a constant there, right? So if I substitute this in this, I would end up getting K outside d of tan theta should be equal to lambda into dl into g. That's the effort that I have put. Dm is lambda dl and t have taken it with a k out. And this sine theta multiplied secant theta, it became a tan theta. Okay. Now let's substitute all the important numbers from the top. What's the value of k? 2 lambda Lg by 3. What is the d tan theta? It is secant square theta d theta. I think there won't be any trouble for you there. Into lambda into why do you think I found the dy? I could have written in terms of dx also. The reason is very simple. Sum of all dy's in the question. Imagine I'm having one dy here, one dy. Dy's are vertical components. Sum of all dy's will give me that height, and that was the agenda. That's the reason why I wrote on the sidelines so that I can build an integral in dy and integrate. Integration of all dy's gives you the height between the two. So that's the reason why I'm going to eliminate dl in terms of dy. Okay. Right. There's a reason for everything that we are doing today. Okay. So this multiplied by dy into cosecant theta into, not to forget, g there. Right. So rest of the things all will get cancelled, and what will happen to the value of dy here? Dy is equal to 2L by 3 will stay. The lambda and g's will get cancelled on both sides. Can you see those cancellations happening? I'll bring the cosecant theta onto this side and make it integration of, I'll write sine and cos. I am more comfortable in sine. So sine theta d theta divided by cos square theta I'll end up getting after manipulating everything. Okay. So what is the integration that I have to perform? As y varies from 0 to height h, your angles vary from 0 to 37 degrees he gave. So these would be 0 to 37 degrees. Is that clear? Right. So with this, I think sine theta d theta is d of cos theta. So this would be simple integration of 1 by x square type of integration. So 1 by x square is minus 1 by x, and hence the value of h is equal to 2L by 3 times of 1 by cos 0 degrees minus 1 by cos 37 degrees. I think there is a minus sign also that is associated. So there should be a modulus of this. Okay. How much is this number? This comes out to be L by 6. So since that was L was given 12 meters, this comes out to be 2 meters, which tells you again R was how much? R was 8 meters, and whereas height came out to be 2 meters. So if I were to complete a circle with the radius of R, it will become a big circle here. Center of curvature will lie somewhere here, whereas this height is only 2 meters, which is what we found. And I'll give you a hint. Uh, Here what I did is I did some manipulation to get an integral where dy survived. You can do some magic or mathematics, both are same. So these two you can manipulate in terms of y and x such that that hint is you'll get the homework solution. That is y versus x equation will also be a part and parcel of the way I did the problem. So try to find it out. Okay, let's move on. Here's another question. This time rope is for a change back to ideal thread. Okay, so ideal thread and ideal pulley. So the size of the pulley can be ignored. So pulley is massless, frictionless, and small size. Three compartments. Okay, so ideal pulley means those three ideas. So you can assume this is almost a point. Remember. So there is a thread which is connected so that these supports are actually not at the same horizontal level, and it holds a mass m in equilibrium. The angle formed by this thread with the vertical is 53 degrees. Angle formed by this thread with respect to vertical is 53 degrees, and horizontal distance between the supports, is 4 meter. Total length of the thread is 5. Okay, so you need to tell me what is the ratio of tension in the thread to the weight that it is holding for equilibrium. This is the question. Total length is given, horizontal distance is given, angle is given. So try this one out. Right. So look here, everyone. Here, the angle is 53 degree. He has not mentioned anything about this. Since the thread is ideal, if the tension here is T, the tension here also has to be T, right? Thread and pulley are ideal, so tension on both sides should be same. If the red rope had mass, you can't say the same, like we saw in catenary's case. So if tension here is T and T equal, then for the horizontal equilibrium of the pulley, this one produces a component of T sine 53. This also should produce a component of T sine 53 only, which means even this angle has to be equal to 53 degrees. That's step one. I'm not writing them because we are running out of time. So you need to write these steps in your classwork. Okay. So this also is 53 step one, how I proved it. Okay. Right. Then step two is realizing that if this thread makes this angle as 53 degrees, then with horizontal here, it will make 37 degrees. So with respect to, you could see I have depicted that one here. If this is 37, I can take a mirror image of this one here on this side. So I'll say this is almost a point. Remember, small discrepancies in the length here. You can assume that this is actually a point. So this thread, I'm drawing it here as a mirror image about this horizontal line. So can I say if this entire thing is 5, this also totally that forms a right angle triangle has a hypotenuse of 5. Can you see that? This is all 5 here. Okay. And since this is already that blue length here has been given as 4, you will immediately be able to reconcile that idea. So if this is 5, so this is 4, sorry, and this is totally equal to 5. Okay, then this entire thing has to be 3. This entire thing has to be equal to 3. Okay, right. So with that, you should be able to realize what the angles are, and then you would be able to write the ratio. Actually, I made a small error here. I should not have given 53 degree here. I should have just left it like this. That is a mistake on my part. So while I was calculating, I already wrote a 53. So the question is this. Okay, so listen, everyone. The question was supposed to be this without giving the angle. Now you realize that it is 53. Okay, so yeah, that was pretty straightforward. Once I give the angle, there's no need. Okay, so that was a error from my part. Okay, I gave too much information. So you realize after drawing all of this that this is going to be 37 and hence this is 53 degrees. Okay, so remove that from the question. I think now you got the point what I said. Okay, so the 53 originally was not given. And now with this as 37 degree, you would realize that this is going to be 53, right? This angle is going to be your 53 degrees. And hence you should be able to write 2t sine 53 degrees is equal to mg for balance, and therefore the required value of t by mg that was asked in the question would become simple.
Sir, cos 53.
Right, so cos 53. So t by mg would become 1 by 2 cos 53, that you can write, and this would be 3 by 5, right? So 5 by 6 is the answer. So yeah, I spoiled the suspense of the question by giving you the angle there. But I hope you understood how to solve it. Instead of taking components, you could use this mirror image style to finish the triangle. Okay. Let's move on to the next one. Let's hope I don't give the answer in the question itself. Okay. Yeah. This time what we are doing is we are going to learn how a weighing machine works. There is a person who is standing on a box of weighing machine hanging in mid-air, and since they will both fall out if they're not connected with threads, we have a system of pulleys which are ideal, right? You could see ideal pulleys and threads which are connected to the ceiling. And he's a 60 kg person and the box weighs 40 kg. Entire system is at rest. Okay, it's in equilibrium. What is the reading of the machine in equilibrium? Okay, and I know this person in my diagram looks like he's standing on the edge. Assume all of this machine is actually very big and person actually stands somewhere in the middle of the machine, right? It was very difficult for me to draw. So disregard the location of the person. Assume these two are very, very small objects, very close to each other, and there he's standing in the middle of the machine, like we do whenever we want to weigh our right ourselves. We stand in the middle of the machine. Assume that, and then try to solve the question. Ideal pulleys and ideal threads. Once it is at rest, it would be far, far easy. So as we go into the question, we know two important things about a weighing machine. First and foremost, it reads, I know it's called weighing machine, but you have seen most of the weighing machines show you cages. So it is calibrated in such a way that it always is supposed to read n divided by g, okay, where g is initially calibrated by the company. It may not be the G at your place. Please understand that. Okay, so there's no two nodes. Just let's take it as one node. First of all, it shows the answer in cages and it reads normal reaction. Okay, right. So normal reaction at that particular place in that experiment divided by original value of G. So this let's suppose is G naught. Okay, right. If nothing is mentioned in the question, I'll assume this G naught is the G's at that place. Otherwise, he will mention the company made that G naught at some particular value and you took it to, let's say, equator and started doing this. So that has to be mentioned in the question. Nowhere I could see that. So I will try to take G naught is equal to G. And always remember its reading is related to not your actual weight, but the amount of push that you apply on that weighing machine, also known as normal reaction. So your job is to find out the normal reaction between the two. And if I start out with the tension that this fellow is applying, so let me write that on the diagram itself. So if this is T, can you see I wrote a tension T, this also would be T. For the equilibrium of this massless pulley, if this is T and this is T, how much should be the tension here? This should be 2T. Okay, right. And if this is 2T and this is also 2T, then this would become 4T.
సరిపోద్దా డాడీ?
Okay, so this is 2T and this is 2T. This should become 4T. And this is 4T and therefore this is 2T. Okay, so how many things are touching the weighing machine's FBD? So if the weighing machine of the FBD is to be drawn, so weighing machine's FBD, can you see that there is 4T plus 2T plus T, total of 7T pulling it up. Okay, 7T pulling it up, and the person will push his normal reaction. Don't put weight of the person on the FBD of the weighing machine, right? So those two are two different forces. Only interaction between these two is the push force or a contact force. So that respectfully you will write as N and not mg. Okay, weighing machine's own weight will act in the downward direction. That you should write as 40g. Okay, so this is one FBD. FBD of the person, please. Whatever Newton's third law tells us, right? He pushes this weighing machine with N downward. He will receive an equal and opposite reaction in the upward direction like this. And his own weight, which is 60g, will act downward. Doesn't mean these two are equal because he's touching a rope which is going to pull him up. He pulls the rope down, rope pulls him up with that tension that I wrote in the question. So there will be a T here. So you could clearly see what mistake you would have made if I wrote n is equal to 60 g. N is not 60 g. So this should be a good habit on your part to write n first and then manipulate. So if this tension was not there, then n is equal to mg you could have written. So don't do that at the start of the question. I think you should be able to solve the two equations, two unknown questions. So 70 should be equal to n plus 40g is one equation, and t plus n should be equal to 60g. So the adding the two equations, 8t is equal to 100g. So t comes out to be 100g by 8. And if you substitute that t back into this equation, then the value of n comes out to be 60 minus 100 by 8, which could have been cancelled. So divided by. So the reading in kgs is simply equal to 60 minus 100 by 8. 100 by 8 I think is 12.5. Right, yeah, 12.5. So this should be equal to 47.5, I guess, yeah. So it shows 47.5 kgs. Okay, just check the calculation, and I did it very fast. So that's the idea that we learn from the weighing machine logics. Okay, right. Next one. So now you have two blocks here, two ideal pulleys. There is a thread that connects the lower pulley to these blocks, and the upper pulley also has one more thread. And from the lower pulley, another block C is hanging. So this is all in vertical plane where acceleration due to gravity is, let's say, he says 10 meter per second square. So there's a sequence to which how this thing is done. The first 3 and 6 are hanged. You could see the first 3 and 6 are hanged. There is a thread, and ends of another light inextensible cord are attached to the bottom of this thing, so that this is attached. This cord supports another pulley, which is a block C of 4 kgs. So let me write those kgs there. So this was 3 kgs, this is 6 kg, and this is 4 kg. Initially, system is held motionless. That means someone is holding it like this so that they don't move, and then released. Which of the following conclusions, that means one or more than one, can you make once the system is released? And is given 4 options which you have to solve for. Try it out. Okay. So the thing is, first option gives us a hint of how to solve the question, right? So he says all the blocks remain motionless. So we'll check it in a reverse manner. Assuming they are motionless, let's try to see whether the system satisfies the equations or not. Okay. So if this is 4 kg, right, and that means 40 Newton, then these two should be 20 Newton each if it has to remain motionless. Okay. Now, if these two individually are 20 Newton, listen carefully. On this block A, there will be a 20 Newton downward force and its own 30 Newton, because 3 kg, 30 Newton. So block A is going to get pulled down overall with 50 Newton force. And that 50 Newton force should be the tension in this thread, which transmits over as 50 Newton here. I hope you're following the sequence. With 50 Newton here and 20 Newton here and its own 60 Newton downward, block B cannot be in equilibrium. Okay, so this is how you attack a question with options. Okay, right? So don't blindly start solving the FBDs. Read the options what he's looking for, and then you'll get the idea of how to proceed in the question. There's nothing wrong in doing that. Okay, so attempting a question in a homework problems, trying to solve it in a subjective manner, and trying to see what objective questions are about. I think these two are two different arts. Both of them you should learn. Okay, so you quickly realize that assuming things to be in motionless condition or at rest is not giving you a compatible set of forces. Tells you that option A is definitely wrong. That means something is moving. Now, once you realize that something is moving, you could either say 3 and 6 and 4 all three are moving, or only two of them or only one of them. Again, like try to look at some conditions. You realize that this 4 kg is fixed to this pulley and there are fixed threads and the ceiling is fixed. That means the gap between this ceiling and this pulley is always fixed. It can't go down because only thing that can happen is this thread can circulate around these pulleys, but this pulley itself cannot go down. So that restriction that you have in the system should tell you that block C definitely will be at rest. Okay, I hope you are able to appreciate what I'm doing. Since block C is at rest, your 20 Newton here are correct, what we did at start. So let me write those 20 numbers there. So this is 20 Newton and this is 20 Newton for sure. Okay, I hope that's clear. So this tension, I don't know, which I write. Okay, right. So on the FBD of the block A, if the motion is upward, then the block B should have a downward motion with same acceleration. Okay, right. So I'll erase those 3s and 6s. I'll write them inside the block so that I can write some acceleration. Okay, so what would be the direction of acceleration? I don't know. I'll assume, and if I get a negative answer, I will just try to get the direction. So this is the FBD. Please understand T and 20, and also there will be a 30 Newton downward. So what are the equations of motion for block A? The equation would be T minus 30 minus 20 is equal to 3A. That is the block A equation. Block B will be going down, so please be careful. Then you should write 60 plus 20 minus T is equal to 6A. So I think now you can solve for both T and A and appropriately mark the answers. Okay, A is definitely wrong answer. I think one or more of B, C, D. I think you can go ahead and solve for the situations. Okay. I hope you understood how we went about the business of a objective question. Let's see another inclined plane question. Okay, so you could see there is an inclined plane. This time it is smooth but not fixed. Okay, smooth inclined plane but not fixed. What is he doing with that inclined plane? Some external agent is pulling this such that the acceleration of the inclined plane itself is g by 2, where g is the acceleration due to gravity at that place. There is a block that is tied with a thread to the inclined plane. So the block also moves along with the inclined plane. The thread is maintained in a horizontal manner that I have not drawn in the diagram, but please take this white horizontal thread to be parallel to the base. So the question is very simple. Under this scenario, what is the tension in the thread? It's all about how well you draw the FBDs. Please understand, try as much as possible to draw all the forces on the free body diagram. Don't try to look at that and try to find things out. Okay, so it's always better you draw them separately. Yes, I know in this case I didn't do that because I was in hurry, but you should have, as a student, especially starting out in this chapter, you should have picked this 3 kg out and drawn all the forces. I did this with experience because it's an objective question. Okay, so here we'll do it completely. Okay. One way of doing it is to write the mg vector as it is, or second way is draw the components of mg as cos theta and sin theta and then do it. Try to think in a commonsensical manner. Is that necessary in this problem to divide the mg into components? Just think, okay, finally a 50 kg as seen by a ground observer would be moving with the same acceleration as wedge because it's tied, right? So on the FBD of this 50 kg, I'll have an A in the leftward direction. So what's the point of mg being taken into components and again further taken into components? So just because there is an inclined plane, just because there is a block, please don't take mg sin theta and mg cos theta. There should be a meaning to your resolving of the components. So with that common sense analysis, I'll just keep mg in the downward direction. If required only, I will try to resolve it. The tension would be acting in the leftward direction that I have to find out, and normal reaction would be actually, now I realize normal reactions components are much better as compared to the 50G's component. So if normal reaction is this way, I'll just draw it in the figure. If normal reaction is this way, what is the angle made by the normal reaction with vertical? So can you help me with this angle in the figure? That would help me write the components here. So if n is this way, can you see this line is perpendicular to incline, whereas this line is perpendicular to the base. Angle between two lines and angle between two perpendiculars would be the same. So this angle also should be 53 degrees, which means n cos 53 will be acting in the upward direction. This would be your n cos 53 and this would be n sin 53. Okay, right? I already told you on the first day, no free body diagram is complete without acceleration. So don't make the mistake. Otherwise you will unnecessarily balance the forces. So you should complete it with acceleration of g/2 acting towards left. I think now it's pretty clear. Leftward minus rightward force, which is T minus n sin 53. What was the mass of the block? I gave 50 kgs. Okay. So this should be equal to 50 times of g/2. Okay, right. That is one equation, and vertically, I think that's pretty simple. N cos 53 degrees minus 50g should be, there's no motion in the vertical direction, so 0. I think you can solve for t and you can solve for n. I'll leave that to you. Okay, right. So this was to give you an idea. Think before you resolve the components. That's the whole purpose of this question. You could have still gone ahead with mg sin theta and mg cos theta and solved it, but it would have become lengthier. Clear? Right. So let's move on. Another question. This time there is a heavy rope hanging a block. Okay, so there is a block of 10 kg and a rope of 5 kg. Can you see? And the length of 10 meters. It's a uniform rope, so mass density is uniform throughout. A and B are points of trisection of the rope. That means these 2 points divide the rope into 3 equal parts. That's called points of trisection. In equilibrium, you have to find the ratio of tension at A to tension at B. Second question, if the entire system is to be accelerated upwards, imagine this is inside a lift and the lift is accelerated upwards with an acceleration cap A. Find the condition of A for which the rope will not break. The breaking tension of the rope is 300 Newton. So first question is equilibrium question. Second question is the accelerated question. Okay, so try it out. Okay. I think the best FBD for, I'm talking about the equilibrium cases. Okay. So for the equilibrium part, you could see that if I want tension at A, then FBD will only show external forces. So idea is to cut that in your mind, obviously, cut the rope at A and draw everything below it. Okay, so once you cut the rope at A in your mind and draw everything below it, you would say the tension that is acting at the A will be upward and the entire weight of the diagram would be in the downward direction. Okay, so can I make a statement that tension at A balances all weight below it? Okay, right, which is equal to I think 2/3 of the rope's weight. This entire weight would be 2/3 of 5 kg and the entire 10 kg. So this should be 2/3 of 5 kg plus the 10 kg's entire weight. So that should be the tension there. So similarly, TB would be equal to 1/3 of 5 kg plus the 10 kg into G. I think now you end up getting the required value of TA is to TB. Okay. Now, whatever logic I said that tension at any place balances the entire weight down. Therefore, the highest tension would be seen at the topmost point. For a hanging rope, the highest tension, therefore, because at that place, it balances the whole rope and this object. So if the braking condition were to happen, the danger of braking is always at the top. So for this particular problem, in order to see whether it breaks or not, my job is to include the tension on the ceiling. Okay, right. So for the second problem, using the same logic, braking possibility is at the top, as tension is max at that place. Okay, right. So the complete FBD, complete equivalent FBD would be total, assume it's like a package. Okay, right. This package is rope plus block. Okay, package of rope plus block. Rope was 5 kg, block was 10 kg. So it's a package of 15 kg on which the tension at the top, which is tension ceiling, and it's all 15g acting up downward, and there is a acceleration of the system in the upward direction. And what should be the condition? The tension should be less than 300 Newton. Okay, so TC minus 15g should be equal to 15a, and therefore 15 of g plus a, which is the tension, should be strictly less than 300. That's the condition. Okay, so this will go off as 20, and I think a comes out to be less than 10 meter per second square. So this should be the condition. If you accelerate it even up, did he say upward or downward? Yeah, upward. Okay, so you accelerated more than or equal to 10, then the rope will break at the top. Okay, let's move to the next one. This one you take it as homework. Okay. So I'm going to go to the next page. When you are given the recording of the lecture, you can pause this video at this place and note the question down and try it out. It's a very interesting and important question also, wherein he asks what is the normal reaction per unit length of the string force that are applied by the pulley. Yesterday we did draw an effective FBD of how a rope pushes the pulley. If you remember that, then I think you will be able to solve this. Okay, so try this one out. It's a good question. Let's move on. This is another interesting question. There is a small metal ball which is being pulled gradually. So let me underline the important word, gradually, on a fixed frictionless hemisphere. Can you see? There is a fixed frictionless hemisphere, and radii of the ball and that of the pulley are much smaller than that of hemisphere, which means this is point and this is also a point mass. As the ball slides from the bottom to the position close to the top, that means this is always sliding on it. It's not pulled off. Okay, so it always maintains its contact on this hemisphere, and this is being pulled very gradually here. Okay, so that every point is touched. How do the magnitudes of the pulling force F and contact force R? R's contact force is normal reaction in this case. Okay, R is the reaction force as they call it. So I would have preferred to put N there. Between the ball and hemisphere changes. Okay, so he's asking what happens to the F and R. So there's a printing error here. It should be capital F here. Okay, so try this one out. As you pull this thing, the ball climbs onto that with a very slow speed. So speed is negligible. So at every instant, you can assume that to be in equilibrium. So in order to do that, what happens to these forces? So as you're trying, I'll draw the diagram for my explanation. Okay. Listen to this. So what I've done is I've drawn the geometric diagram. This is the geometric diagram. That means physical diagram. This is the free body diagram. Okay, remember those two words. So the physical diagram is the actual thing that we will have. These are all geometries that you can see with your eyes, whereas these forces you can only measure and not see. Okay, so this ball has been freed from the diagram and then put up with all the forces that it will be acted upon. Okay, I wantedly use the same color for the forces and the lines that are parallel in this diagram. You could see this is mg. Let me write those, okay, for your convenience. There will be an mg acting, okay, and I would prefer normal reaction. I don't want to use capital R. Okay, capital R and N are the same. Okay, so it would be easier for me to depict. So this is the normal reaction acting, and the force F that he's using is this direction. Okay, right, and the same things in the physical diagram I'll mark as the distances. Okay, so the radius of this thing is R, and the height of this green thing is H, and this distance is, let's say, L. Okay, right. Now what I'll argue is, since this block is moving very slowly, slowly means v tends to 0, acceleration tends to 0. So it's a quasi-static movement. So v tends to 0 and acceleration tends to 0. So that means it's a equilibrium condition. So the net force on the system should balance, and that you could clearly see is a special case of Lami's theorem. Okay, so these three forces should obey Lami's theorem. Now Lami's theorem tells you that whatever angles that you are having here, right? So for example, I were to mark some angles inside this, this, and this. Are they going to be similar angles in this triangle? Because this side is parallel to this side, this side is parallel to this side and this side is parallel to this side. So if I were to use a sine rule in this triangle and Lami's theorem in this triangle, remember the sine angles in both would be same with respect to each other. So here sine rule would be equivalent to here Lami's theorem. So I'll combine these two. Okay, I'm not even writing those steps. Okay, I would have written r divided by sine of this angle, h divided by sine of this angle equal to L divided by this. Here also I'll get n by sine. So I'll eliminate sine of angles from both sides and then say equivalently n divided by r should be mg divided by h is equal to f divided by L. Okay, so that directly I'm impressing upon you that it's equivalent to writing these steps. H divided by mg is equal to f divided by L, which means as this video progresses, whatever happens to L, H and R, same thing happens similarly to N, F and mg. Can you see as the ball keeps moving, R remains constant, magnitude of R remains constant. That means the line that is parallel to that also remains constant. So I would say as R remains constant, it implies N doesn't change. What happens to mg? Because mg and h anyway are constant, that ratio. That means this is a ratio which is constant. Therefore, all the three ratios are constant. That's why if R remains constant, N remains constant. For F by L remaining constant, what happens to L? You could see that there is a pulley here and the length L actually as it keeps climbing up reduces. So for L reducing and F by L to remain constant, F has to decrease. So let's say as L decreases, for F by L to remain the same, F decreases. So we go back to the options in the question and say F will decrease, whereas the normal reaction, which he calls it as capital R, will remain unchanged. So the answer should be C. Which would have been very difficult to solve if you were using angles and resolving components and all. So this is a very beautiful example of how in some cases only the Lami's theorem would be very easy or a shortcut to solve questions. Okay, so that's it. Let's move to the next one. This is another question that was asked or requested by the student from one of the DPPs. So let's try to see what is happening here. There is a smooth fixed pipe. Can you see the yellow one is a pipe? Pipe is always a hollow one. Remember that water can flow through it. And it's a fixed one in XY plane. XY plane is a vertical plane. Inside that pipe, there is a red color thread. Can you see that has been placed end to end? Ends of the pipe are known in coordinate system x1, y1, comma, x2, y2. Okay. Acceleration due to gravity is g downward. A uniform rope of linear mass density lambda and total length L, which fills the entirety of the pipe, is released from rest. So someone placed the pipe and the rope and they release the rope from rest. Immediately after release, assuming every element of the rope moves with same magnitude of tangential acceleration. That means every point will simultaneously move. There is no lumping up of the rope. Okay, so in real life, what actually could happen is that some points will move and some points won't, and there will be lumps formed, heaps formed. That is not happening. Everything will continuously move is assumed in this question. Okay, right. Find the value of that tangential magnitude of acceleration. That's the question in terms of given quantities. X1, y1 is given, x2, y2 is given. Lambda of the rope is given and total length L is given, acceleration due to gravity. What is not given is arbitrary shape of the pipe and rope is not mentioned. So maybe he's thinking that's not going to affect your answer. So let's try to see that. Just visualize the question, scribble the working in your notes, leave some space for the actual question. So when the video gets posted, you try to fill your classwork with the actual question so that we can save time in the class. Okay, I hope you noted down the information required. Okay, I'm scrolling it up. So if the rope is of some shape that I don't know, it could keep varying. And I pick a small element here. Okay, right? And that element, let's suppose, makes an angle. That element is again drawn here. Let's say it makes an angle theta with horizontal, so that I have drawn separately. This part's FBD, free body diagram of the small part. If I take that small part out like this, like last time, we have done it quite a few number of times. Then what are the forces that you can write, because it's resting on a kind of an, can I say this small part is resting on an inclined plane of angle theta. Every part you can assume its own inclined plane of angle theta. Theta is a variable, please understand that. So for this inclined plane resting block, what are the forces that would be acting on it? So you could say dmg sine theta would be down the incline, dmg cos theta would be perpendicular to incline. Okay, normal reaction, which is dn, would be like this, and there'll be forces of tension, right? Always remember, wherever you cut it, there should be tension as an external force that you have to put up here. So I'll put a tension this side and tension this side, but it could be variable because this time rope has mass. Remember, along a ideal thread, tension will remain the same, but once the rope has mass, you always should consider the variation of tension. And that variation in calculus language, I can put forward as, if this is in this direction t, then this should be acknowledged as t plus dt. I hope you can understand this. And if all of this rope is moving down the incline with the same acceleration magnitude a, that finishes the FBD. Looks like a small one, but a lot of stuff is written in that FBD. As I keep on saying, FBD is incomplete if you don't write acceleration. Okay, right. So this is it. Since there is no motion in this direction, right? There is no motion in this direction and there is no velocity. Otherwise, if velocity was there, then you can't even write dn is dmg cos theta. In circular motion, you will be also taught that there is a acceleration in this direction called as v square by r. That we are not taking because it was released from rest. So I can proudly say that the value of dn should be matching with dmg cos theta at the start as v is equal to 0. Okay, right? And what can you write? In the horizontal direction, let me write that. That is more interesting actually. T plus dt plus dmg cos theta, or no, sine theta, I should say, minus t should be equal to value of dm multiplied by acceleration a. So this is a more interesting direction in which you have some result. Okay, so can you clearly see the cancellation of t's? Okay, so let me rearrange again. dt plus, this is the important part, dm is lambda into dl into g sine theta. So what I'll do is I'll write lambda g sine theta first and then write dl. Maybe I'll try to integrate. Okay, this should be equal to, now what is this number? Well, that usual lambda into dl into a. Okay, right. Now I'll integrate both sides and also will try to understand what is meant by the integration. And I'm trying to put it at places where I can bring out the constant parts. Can you see here? I brought lambda and g, but I didn't bring sine theta out. As I already told you, as I move across the rope while integrating, sine theta will be not a constant. So I have to keep it inside that integral. A, he told you, is a same value throughout the rope. Okay, he asked you to take that. That's why I could bring a out. but DL stayed inside. Now, as I integrate from the topmost point to the bottommost point, what would lambda DL give you? It will give you the total value of the length L. Okay, right. So this would give you total value of the length L. So this I would say is total value of length L. Now, what does lambda DL sine theta, sorry, integration of DL sine theta give you? So can you see that if this letter is DL, this length is DL. Look here, I'm marking here in the diagram, everyone. So if this length is DL and this is theta, can you realize that there is a small triangle like in that particular diagram of catenary that we did? DL sine theta is this blue length. Can you see this is your DL sine theta? So that means, can I call that as dy? So this you are summing up all the values of dy's. So if you go back to the diagram, integration of all dy's, every dy integrated is nothing but the projection of these two onto y-axis, and whatever is the sum of all dy's that you're talking about, that I would say is y2 minus y1 directly. Integration of dy as the first coordinate to the last coordinate, I'll end up getting it as y2 minus y1. Since it's a positive number, I should consider that as y1 minus y2, because here y1 is bigger than y2. So that's the difference in the coordinates of that particular thing. Not only that, what does the dt mean? Dt, you should start with the end tensions. Okay, so T first to T last. Okay, right. So what is T first to T last? I think when you go from tension to tension, everywhere you can write, if first tension is T1, second tension is T2, third is T3. So first DL element you get T2 minus T1, second DL element you get T3 minus T2, third one is T4 minus T3. So when you add up telescopically, all the things will get cancelled, and integral dt will simply be first tension and last tension subtraction. All the inner parts will get cancelled. And since these are loose ends, can you see these are loose ends? The first and last tensions would be 0 individually. So integral dt, remember tension varies across, but integral dt would become as 0 as loose ends are given. And that solves the problem pretty quickly. This would imply, I argued that this is lambda g into y higher minus y lower is equal to lambda a into total length of the rope that was given to you. So lambda gets cancelled, even lambda was not required. So the value of acceleration in such a scenario would be equal to g into y coordinate difference only multiplied by and divided by L. So this is your answer. So it doesn't depend on the shape of that rope. It doesn't even depend on x coordinates. It only depends on the difference in the y coordinates. I hope you understood what we did in this question. Okay, right. Let's move ahead. Now we are going to revisit some of the spring problems and see. Already I introduced Hooke's law to you, so we'll try to take it further a bit more. Okay, so what we consider until unless otherwise given is we always consider, let me write it here, we consider helical springs of, very important, let me write it in a different color so that you can understand the important, constant, or I should use the word uniform, sorry, not constant, uniform pitch. Uniform pitch which obey Hooke's law. Okay, right. So what does it mean is, if I were to pull this one with a force F, okay, pitch is nothing but distance between two successive coils, okay, two successive circles. And if you pull this one, what he's trying to say is uniform is the pitch, which is, let's say, P, distance between these two, if this one increases, these two also will increase, these two will also increase, and all the new structure will have the same pitch throughout. Please understand, the pitch of the previous case and present case is not the same. Pitch will increase, but it will uniformly increase throughout. It's not like these two are closer, these two are farther. That may happen in real life springs, but the ones that we consider in our situations where he'll just say spring, you will consider this idea that it will be uniform throughout every part of the spring. So which means if the spring constant of the original one is K, listen carefully to this. If the spring constant of original one is K, and let's suppose the total length I can write as L1 plus L2. And I further divide this into two parts of, let's suppose this is L1. This is very interesting. So you're imagining in your mind that this is going to be L1 and this is L2. And I want to consider what is the spring constant of this. Assume this is K1 and this is K2. This is a massless spring, right? Remember, if the force here is F and I cut this part and I want to say that this one, which is not having any mass, has to stay in equilibrium, even here on the cut part, the force should be F. So like strings, even in a massless spring, you'll always have same tension or same force throughout. So which I can write in the FBD of this one and FBD of this one and FBD of the entire thing together. So assuming originally that these rings were very close to each other, that means the pitch was nearly zero, you could say that the present length is caused by the pitch extension of each one of these links. And obeying Hooke's law, the force on the entire red one can be written as K times of L1 plus L2, which should be obviously equal to the individual FBD's forces of K1 L1 and K2 L2. Okay, so using that logic and the uniform pitch understanding, this is the equation we'll come to as a conclusion. Original K into L1 plus L2. Therefore, what's the individual spring constant of a cut part? The value of K1 will therefore come out to be equal to K times of L1 plus L2, the whole length, divided by L1, and same thing with K2. K times of L1 plus L2 divided by L2. And can you clearly see the K therefore is inversely proportional to its own length? Okay, so that means shorter the part of the spring that you cut, shorter the part of the spring you cut, more is the spring constant that you will get. Okay, so that's the whole idea. Shorter the cut part of the spring, greater the spring constant. Okay, right. Now you can reverse this logic in your mind. If two springs of spring constant K1 and K2 are connected end on end, this is called end on end. This is, let's suppose, literally one spring and this is another spring, and you attach them. Then if you want to find the effective spring constant of the entire thing, I think you can use these expressions. Okay, so that will lead us to a formula. If we connect two springs K1 and K2 end on end, this is the way they call it, or simply this end on end connection is also called as series connection. Then K effective should obey above relations. Okay, above relations. So what would be those relations be? Can you clearly see that if I take 1 by K1 here and 1 by K2 and add, then I'll be having a common denominator. That's the best way to add. Okay, so that should imply 1 by K1. I'm doing it from here, please. 1 by K1 plus 1 by K2 should become 1 by K. So this is the equation for connection for two springs in series. And so that means simultaneously we have done what will happen to the spring constant if spring given is cut, and what will happen to the spring constant if two springs are added. So we have done two situations in one section because those two are obviously related to each other. And you could see K becomes K1 K2 by K1 plus K2, and each K is less than each of K1 and K2, which is expected because out of K, K1 and K2, longest spring is K, and longest spring always have lesser spring constant, as we have already seen here. This is a comma. Okay. And you could see this in real life also. What does K signify? Physical significance. K signifies difficulty of pulling a spring, pulling or pushing, or deforming is another word that they use. Okay, so if K is 200 Newton per meter in one case versus 300 Newton per meter, how do you describe that? You would say to get the extension of 1 meter in case 1, you have to pull with 200 Newton force, whereas in the second case, to get the same 1 meter extension, you have to pull it with 300 Newton force. So this one is a more stiff spring as compared to the first one. So that's what the stiffness means. So greater K means that there will be greater K means that there will be a more difficulty. And just pick up a rubber band at home today after the class. Okay, and rubber band also obeys, let's say, Hooke's law and has the same spring constant or force constant. So if the rubber band, let's say you cut it off, first of all, the loop that you have, you cut it off into a single line. Okay, and then you try to extend it, you'll feel the difficulty of extending it. Now cut that rubber band into small very small pieces and try to extend them. I think you'll find that small pieces extension more difficult than the whole rubber band, trying to signify that smaller the cuts are, more difficult it is to extend. So that's the whole idea that we are developing here. Okay, right. Next, last one for the day, springs in parallel. So we have connected them series. We saw what happened. I think by now you realize whatever experiment that you have done with rubber bands in your mind, okay, those small cut pieces of rubber band, now put one on the top of the other, one on the top of the other, and then try to extend them. They will become even more difficult. Okay, so we expect the springs in parallel to have greater spring constant. So I'll try to prove that to you using mathematics and FBD, of course. So imagine this is a support, this is the floor, and there is a block to which two springs are connected. There is an alternative way of drawing the springs. Okay, so people in the examinations, they will also draw them like this. So whether you see this symbol or the helical symbol in mechanics, you consider them to be springs only. In electricity and magnetism, this will become resistance and that will become inductance. But in mechanics, both of those are symbols for springs. Okay, Hooke's law springs. So assume this is your K1 spring and this is your K2 spring. And this block from this position, let's say, has been pulled to the right by a distance x. So on the FBD of the block, do you see a restoring force or a force which is of the pull of each of the springs? Since the extension in both the springs is the same, the value of the Hooke's law force would be here K1x and here it is K2x. Can I say this would be therefore equivalent to having to replace this block's FBD with summation of these forces and one spring alone, which is nothing but K1 plus K2 times of x. Okay, so therefore K effective would be equal to K1 plus K2 in parallel connection. Parallel connection therefore has same extension. So we'll make a note and round off the class. Series connection implies same tension throughout. Okay, right, same tension, and 1 by K effective in series should be sigma. You can connect more than 2, right? So you can write this as sigma of 1 by K I, where I varies from 1 to n number of springs. Whereas the second one, parallel connection, you can have more than 2 itself, means same. If the tension was same, here extension or deformation would be same. I can't just write extension because there could be a compression also. Deformation would be same. Here the value of K effective would be sum. Here the result is smaller than each one of the terms. Here the result is greater than each one of the terms. That's the idea. It makes it more difficult in parallel connections. Okay. So we'll solve some problems on springs in tomorrow's class and also introduce the concept of non-inertial frames and pseudo force. So in case you are going to encounter this non-inertial frame and pseudo force in your reading, please do continue the reading and then I'll establish those facts in tomorrow's class. Okay, so that's it for today.